Bueno, chicos, hablamos de los mandatos. Los mandatos means commands. Commands. Los mandatos, commands. Like I'm commanding you to do something. In English, when we give a command, usually all we have to do is take off the subject pronoun. For example, if I was making a statement like, you run a lot, I need the subject pronoun or else it doesn't make sense. You run a lot. If I just said run a lot, it would be like, well, who runs a lot? But if I'm giving you a command, like run, I don't use the subject pronoun. I take it all off. I would say run every day. And that's a command in English. So in English, to make a command, the verb stays the same. It's just that we take off the subject pronoun. In Spanish, the commands are formed with a different form of the verb. And we've already learned some of those commands. Affirmative to commands we reviewed at the very beginning of this year. Does this kind of ring a bell? Affirmative to commands? Maybe? Okay, well, hopefully it'll start coming back to you. To form an affirmative to command, to tell somebody to do something, we use the LA form of the present tense for most regular verbs. For ejemplo, mezclar, encender, batir. These are some cooking verbs. Mezclar, mix. Encender, turn on. Batir, beat. Like mix it really fast. I would use the LA form of the present tense to give somebody a command, like mix the chocolate chips in. I would say mezcla. Mix in the chocolate chips, mezcla. Encender is an E to I stem changing verb. So I would use the LA form, but I have to take into account that stem change. Enciende. Turn on the stove. Enciende la estufa. Batir. Beat the eggs. It's a regular IR verb. Bate. There's a really cute children's song in Spanish called Bate Bate el Chocolate. I'll try and play it for you. Find video at some point. Bate means beat. Beat the eggs. Beat the chocolate. Beat the hot chocolate. There are 8 irregular to command forms. Vin diesel has 10 weapons, eh? Does that sound familiar? Hopefully, maybe. I like the one that goes, Diaz con sal se ten beben. Diaz con sal. Say, with an accent mark. The accent's important. Ten. They. Then. The. As. Con. Sal. Say. Ten. They. Ben. Does this kind of sound familiar? Okay, I see some nodding. This is good. Why not? So this is review. Now we'll do new stuff. Yay, new stuff, right? To give a negative to command, to tell somebody, don't do that. It's a little bit different. Instead of using the LA form of the present tense, we'll start with the yo form of the present tense. And then you have to change the ending. Instead of an O, you change it to the opposite vowel. Does your paper say letter or vowel? Vowel is better. That's more specific. Do you remember what the vowels are? A, E, I, O, U? Okay. So change the ending to the opposite vowel and add an S. And you might be thinking, you're Einerwold, the opposite vowel? What are you talking about? For example, if your verb is an AR verb, the opposite vowel is going to be an E. If you're making a command out of an ER or IR verb, can you guess what the opposite vowel might be? It's an A. Remember, there's 3 kinds of verbs in Spanish, AR, ER, IR verbs. Oftentimes in our verb endings, we have the same vowel in the ending as in the infinitive, right? Like, oh, as, amos, ay, san. Those are the AR verb endings, and a lot of them have the vowel A in them. So in a command, we're using the opposite vowel. And then we add the letter S to the command because we're talking about the to form. And in the present tense, the to form usually has an S at the end, right? Don't forget to add the word no, because these are only for negative to commands. Affirmative to commands are different. We just reviewed those. Finally, don't forget the stem change if you need it. Here are examples. I want to say don't mix, don't turn on, don't beat. So we'll use the yo form. Mezclo is the yo form in the present tense, but then I have to take off the O and replace it with the opposite vowel. This is an AR verb, so the opposite vowel is an E. Don't forget to add no, because these are negative commands. And of course, we have to add an S. No mezcles. This is really ugly. Ay caramba. It'll just have to be ugly. Don't mix in the chocolate chips yet. No mezcles. To say don't turn on the stove, we would use the yo form. Remember, it's a stem changing verb. Enciendo. But we have to take off the O. Ay caramba. Take off the O and add the opposite vowel, which would be an A, and then add an S, because we're talking about you informal. And of course, we have to add the word no. Don't turn on. No enciendas. Don't turn on the stove. No enciendas la estufa. Finalmente, but here it's an IR verb. The yo form is bato, because it's a regular IR verb. Quitamos la O. We're talking about an IR verb, so the opposite ending is going to be an A. We add an S because we're talking about the to form. And of course, we need the word no in front because these are negative to verbs. No batas. Don't beat the eggs too much. They'll get rubbery. ¿Está bien? You might be thinking, Senora Einerwold, why does it matter if we use the yo form? We should use any form. We just need the stem, right? And if it's a stem changing verb, we need to do the stem change, and that's all we need to know. So why does it matter if we're using the yo form? Do you remember we reviewed the irregular yo verbs? It matters for those. For example, if we were using the verb venir, venir has an irregular yo form. ¿Recuerdan cuál es? Vengo, exactamente. So if we were saying to someone, don't come, we go to yo, take off the O, and add the opposite vowel. It's an IR verb, so we add an A, add an S, because we're talking about to. And then we'll add no, because it's a negative to command. No vengas means don't come. Don't come to the party too early. No vengas. Otro ejemplo es, vamos a ver, hacemos, caramba. I'm trying to think of a good one. Decir. What's the yo form for decir? Digo. Exactamente. Digo. So to make a command, for example, don't say that. Take off the O. We add the opposite ending. It's an IR verb, so we'll add an A. We add an S, and then we have to add a no. No digas. This is where we get the phrase, no me digas. Do you remember that rejoinder phrase? No me digas is like saying, get out of town. Don't tell me that. I don't believe you. No me digas. Bueno. You might be thinking, Senora Einerwold, this is really complicated. What else are you going to throw at us for these usted and ustedes commands? The good news is, the usted and the ustedes commands are very, very similar to the negative to commands. So for affirmative and negative, usted and ustedes commands, just like we did with the negative to commands, use the yo form of the present tense with the opposite vowel. Recuerdan, if you're talking about an AR verb, the opposite vowel is going to be an E. If you're making a command out of an ER or IR verb, the opposite vowel is going to be an A. Add an N for the ustedes form because the ustedes form in the present tense usually has an N at the end of it, right? Ellos, ellas, ustedes, on N. Don't forget to add the word no. If you're telling someone to not do something, to make it negative, don't do that. Otra vez, don't forget the stem change if needed. So we can use the same pattern to make both affirmative and negative usted and ustedes commands. For example, mix, turn on, beat. We could say mez enciende bat. And we add the opposite ending. Usted would be mez play. Is that what we were thinking? Encienda bata. Because the opposite ending for an AR verb is an E, the opposite ending of an ER or IR verb is going to be an A, just like we have here. The ustedes commands are very similar. Otra vez, mez, enciende, bat, and we still do need the opposite vowel, E, A, but for the ustedes commands, we add the letter N onto the end. Mezclen, enciendan, batan. All of these commands can be made negative just by adding no in front. No, 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 no. Otra vez. For the yo irregular verbs that we reviewed yesterday, they work just the same way. Go to yo, add the yo. Go to yo, drop the yo, add the opposite ending. For example, tener means to have and has an irregular yo form. Tengo. To turn that into an usted command, we would say tenga. To turn it into an ustedes command, we would say tengan. Since it's an ER verb, the opposite vowel is an A. ¿Está bien? How are you feeling about this? You might be thinking, Senor Einerwold, when am I ever going to give somebody a command in the usted form? I'm a teenager. I don't give commands to people that are like older than me that I need to call Mr. or Ms. That is true. But you'll see these commands quite a bit. For example, in signage, like no smoking, no fuma. Or if you might see them on the instructions for some cereal, or like for hot cereal, to make oatmeal. The instructions might be in the usted form. If you're watching TV in Spanish, like a cooking show, you might see these commands or hear these commands because the host is telling you guys, the audience, to add your eggs and beat your the cheese into them, for example. Pues, un poco más. So for all of these, for the negative to form, the usted commands, the ustedes commands, there's one simple rule that we can use. It's a little rhyme. Just like in Spanish 1, when you learned how you feel and where you are, always use a verb estar. Do you remember that? The rhyme is go to yo, drop the yo, add the opposite ending. Go to yo, drop the O, add the opposite ending. Go to yo, drop the O, add the opposite ending. It's supposed to be kind of rhythmic, so it sticks in your head. I forgot to put some of this stuff on your notes. Don't write any of this yet. I'll tell you what to write so you can squish in just a little bit right at the bottom here. Don't write it yet, just listen. Hay cuatro formas de mandato, commands, que son totalmente irregulares y necesitas memorizarlas. Son irregulares. Los verbos son dar, estar, ir, ser. Our rule is go to yo, drop the O, add the opposite ending. All of these have irregular yo forms. Do you remember what the yo forms in the present tense of these verbs are? Doy. Estoy. Boy, are you seeing a pattern? See. So our rule doesn't really work. Go to yo, drop the O, add the opposite ending. Like what do we do with this random Y? It just doesn't really work. So these 4 verbs in Spanish have irregular command stems. The commands for dar are no des in the to command, de with an accent mark for usted, and den for ustedes, or no den, no de. The commands for estar are no estés, este or no este, estén or no estén. These 2 verbs, you can kind of see the pattern with the commands. Am I right? Like, they have the opposite ending, and they're kind of similar to the present tense. Dar is an AR verb, but the vowel in the commands is an E. Estar is another AR verb, but the vowel in the commands is an E. Ir and ser just get kind of weird. You just kind of have to memorize them. The command stem for the verb ir is vaya. No vayas. Vaya o no vaya. Vayan o no vayan. The irregular command stem for ser is sea. No seas. Sea, no sea. Sean, no sean. So if nothing else, por favor, escribe en tu papel, just squish it in the bottom margin. If you can remember the usted command form for dar, estar, ir, ver, de, este, vaya, sea, then it's pretty easy to extrapolate the ustedes ending, because you just add an N, and pretty easy to extrapolate the to ending for negative commands, because you just add an S, right? You might also want to write these infinitives on your paper. Dar, de, estar, este, ir, vaya, ser, sea. One tricky thing is that the usted command, de, has an accent mark to distinguish it from the preposition de, which means of or from, usually. The to form and the ustedes form of the commands for dar do not have an accent mark. How are you feeling about this? Go to yo, drop the O, add the opposite ending. ¿Hay preguntas?